And we're live on YouTube now. And Miss Rebecca has joined us as well.
All right. Okay. Welcome and good evening. My name is Gary Dyke and I'm the CAO for the Municipality of North Grenville. And I thank you all for joining us for what is the second of our two public sessions for the consideration of and presentation of the draft 2020 municipal budgets. There'll be presentation of three budgets tonight. There'll be the 2022 operating budget, capital investment budget, as well as the water wastewater budget. As part of our, I think it's important to note, as part of our public consultation, we've already had meetings with the local media, the Chamber of Commerce, BIA, as I've mentioned, the previous public meeting. Comments that we received tonight will be recorded and will be provided as part of the budget package that will be presented to council at our first meeting on February 22nd, with an anticipated approval of the budgets on March 2nd. Before we get into the actual detail, I'd like to a few introductory comments with respect to the budget itself. And the budget you're going to hear about tonight, it represents our community investment, our modernization, both of which are in keeping with the pillars of the recently adopted strategic plan for the municipality. While it also takes great effort to adjust the challenges we face in putting this budget together with respect to the impact of COVID-19 and the impact it had in our revenues and also our expenditures in the operation municipality, but also with the rapid increase or the significant increases in inflation we've experienced over the past year and are anticipating moving into 2022 as well. But at the same time, staff has taken great care to actually recognize the economic profile of our municipality. And we're putting a budget together for council's consideration. It takes that into account when we're doing our investment plan and the operational modernizations for the municipality as well. The process for tonight is that we will present to you the three budgets. We'll go through each one of the three budgets. We'll stop for questions at the end, but I'd also encourage everybody, if they have a question during any of the presentations, to use the chat function. We'll record those as well, and we'll get back to them when we can, just in case you don't want to lose thought of your question as we move forward. So I'll encourage people to use the chat function there again. With that, I'll turn it now over to our acting treasurer, Femi Ogunrunde, who will now walk you through the budgets, starting with the operating budget. Femi.
Thank you, Gary. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening for session 2 of the public presentation of the draft 2022 budget. By way of an agenda, next slide, please. I'll do a bit of an introduction. We'll talk about the way forward in 2022. Then we'll talk about some strategic highlights for 2021. And the impact of the North Grenville's strategic plan on the budget in 2022. We'll dive deeper into the operating budget. We'll look at the capital budget, and then we'll also talk about the water and wastewater budget. And in all of that, we'll also talk about how property tax rates are calculated. And as part of this presentation as well, you'll get to see the detailed budgets for operating, capital, and water, wastewater. Next slide, please. So, as Gary mentioned, 2021 was an interesting year for the municipality. We had lots of ups and downs, although I am confident that the good news stories that we've had in 2021 have far outweighed the challenges we've encountered. And I also believe that going forward, we have an opportunity to actually maintain our investments that we've made in our community and continue to modernize our municipality as a whole. So the draft budget being presented tonight is actually predicated on two main principles, which are modernization and service delivery. So service delivery in the sense of meeting the needs of our community in a sustainable way. But doing all of this has come with some challenges. And the big one has actually been the coronavirus pandemic, which has resulted in the municipality having to close down our arenas and facilities multiple times in 2021 due to the lockdowns. This has resulted in lost revenues for the Parks and Recreation Department. And also on the technology front, we've had to make substantial IT investments just to enable staff work from home. We've had to set up policies to enable us monitor the effectiveness of working from home, and also to enable us to hold virtual council meetings in 2021 and as well in 2022. And on the good news side, in 2021, we found out that the grant research analyst position has been successful for the municipality. We've been able to find and submit applications for many grants, and we've encountered successes along the way as well. So just to provide a bit of context to that as well, we've actually submitted 33 grants in 2021, of which 16 were approved, resulting in a funding of over 800K for the municipality. Next slide, please. So what's the way forward for us going into 2022? Just taking it a bit back and looking at how the investments we've made in 2021 has set the framework for how we approach 2022. We've taken steps to actually relocate our customer service desk permanently to the ground floor. We believe that this relocation is going to improve customer satisfaction in a big way. And I would also like to highlight that this investment was partly funded by a grant that was applied and received successfully in 2021. We also conducted an overall review of our customer service delivery framework and public engagement guidelines, which we also believe will improve the overall customer experience with the municipality as we go forward in 2022. This project was also funded by a grant. On the modernization side of things, we've implemented a new building department software, which we are very confident will result in efficiencies for the department in 2022 and beyond. We'll also be taking steps in 2022 to implement a new procurement system for the finance department. This will help us streamline how we process vendor invoices, manage our cash flow, track commitments made by the municipality at any given time. Also in 2021, we launched a new budgeting and reporting tool. And the 2022 budget you get to see tonight would actually mark the first time that not Grenville's budget was actually prepared not on Excel spreadsheets. We believe this investment is going to help us to meet our reporting obligations, both internally and externally to council and the public. In 2022 as well, we'll also be investing in our asset management tool, which will include a maintenance tracker for all our assets. We believe this investment will help us develop a work order system, which will allow us to track how we spend when we maintain our assets and be able to assign data-driven risk statuses to our assets. We'll also be taking a closer look in 2022 at our overall reserve strategy, just to be able to strategize better on how we use our reserves in the future and how we actually contribute to our reserves going forward. And also in 2021, the municipality commenced its strategic planning program. The plan was approved by council early in 2022 and is currently being implemented as of this moment by staff. Next slide, please. So just to touch a bit more on strategic highlights. So as I mentioned, we commenced the strategic planning process in 2021, and this plan was completed early in 2022. So some highlights of the strategic plan will help us to manage and balance North Grenville's growth in a sustainable way, ensure that we continue to offer great services going forward, help us leverage economic development and tourism as a strategy for the municipality. It would help us also to be mindful of our environment and the future sustainability of all our resources, maintain the sense of community that exists, and help us to also run an efficient government and continue to modernize. Next slide, please. So to touch a bit on the highlights of certain departments in 2021, As I also mentioned earlier, that the building department implemented a new software in 2021. We've seen efficiencies come out as a result of this investment. And going forward also in 2022 and beyond, we expect that these efficiencies will continue. We are also successful in helping to create over 200 new residential units. We also went ahead to implement a new fee structure for the building department as well, just to better reflect the level of service that's being offered by the department. Next slide, please. And in the Parks, Recreation and Culture department, we were able to complete the interior and exterior LED lighting installation at the Municipal Center. We were also able to install a new play structure at the Glen Gables Park in 2021. And we commenced the design project for the Riverside Rehabilitation Project also in 2021. As part of this budget, you will see the investment that we're committed to making in 2022 and beyond in this project when we get to the capital budget. Next slide, please. And in the Public Works Department in 2021, we introduced a new waste and organics program. We started to notice a decline in the amount of waste that's now sent to the landfills as a result of this program. I'd also like to highlight at this point that this program requires substantial investment from the tax base, but it also ties directly into the highlights of the strategic plan, which helps us to sustainably manage our resources going forward. Next slide, please. And so in this slide, you can see from a data perspective, what the difference has been for the municipality before the program was introduced and after the program was introduced. So I'd just like to draw your attention to the bottom graph. In 2021, we can see that there's a sharp decline in the amount of garbage that's been sent to the landfills in 2021. And from our projections going forward, we expect that this tonnage will continue to reduce into the future. Next slide, please. So as part of our 2022 staff recommended budget, there've been a couple of impacts on the budget that I would like to highlight this evening. On a level of service concept, we've had to make investments in this budget to help us to keep up with the continuous demand for our services as a municipality. This also ties directly into our continuous need for modernization and just finding efficiencies within our process to keep up with the growth levels. We'll also be investing in a long-term financial plan or a re-update of our long-term financial plan. This will help us also to invest in our asset management capabilities going forward to comply with Bill 588 on implementing a new asset management plan for the municipality, and just being able to track the maintenance of our assets through work orders and being able to forecast replacement cost of these assets in a much more modernized and better way going forward. Inflation has also been a big issue for many municipalities, just like North Grenville, both in 2021 and 2022. We have to pay utilities and buy materials and supplies on a large scale. And just the general increases in prices of goods and services has had an impact on the budget as well. To provide some context to that, average inflation in 2021 in Ontario was just under 4%, and it's currently at 5.2% in 2022. So this has had a direct impact on the pricing of services and expenses that the municipality will be undertaking in 2022. And on the COVID front, just in 2022 as well, we had to close our facilities and arenas as well for the month of January. This has directly impacted our revenue forecast as well. And we'll be talking more about this as we go along in the year 2022, as we start to see the impact that this will have. And on the modernization front as well, we'll continue to invest in our IT infrastructure, making sure that all of our data is secure and safe from cybersecurity risks as well going forward. Next slide, please. So as part of a budget process change, an operations process change, we've identified some projects that were in previous budget years captured under the capital budget. And we've actually pulled this project out of the capital budget and into the operating budget. I should also note at this point that this will not be a new request for funding for this project because they've already been identified in prior budget years. But just from a process standpoint, we've pulled these items out of the capital budget and placed them into the operating budget. Once we go down further in the presentation and I show the operating budget, I'll highlight this as well. This project will be directly funded from the reserves and will not have an impact on the proposed tax rate that staff will be recommending as part of this budget, as funding has already been allocated for this project. Next slide, please. So as part of this year's budget as well, I would like to highlight some of the investments that we'll be making as a community and in the community as well. The first one actually is the community grants program. We received 19 applications, totaling a request of over 230,000. Staff is recommending a funding of just over 110,000 for the community grants program. On the community support side, we're putting forward a proposal to fund and support the victim services to the tune of 32,500, the Salvation Army Food Bank to the tune of 25,000, the Bed Donovan hospices to just over 15,000. We're also putting forward a request to fund health and long-term care with the Dundas Manor at 20,000 and the Kempfield District Hospital at 100,000. As part of this budget also, we'll be bringing forward a proposal for an affordable housing program to be funded at 250,000, a community improvement plan at 112,500, and support for our small businesses to the tune of 120,000. This will be a total of $786,409 as community investments that we're bringing forward as part of the 2022 budget. Next slide, please. So just to give an overall picture of the year-on-year changes and increases in the budget for 2022, at the total expense level, we're bringing forward a total expenditure of just over 26 million for the 2022 budget year. And on the funding side, just as I mentioned earlier, that we had identified some projects that were previously in the capital budget, but are now being represented in the operating budget. We're bringing forward a transfer from reserve to fund those previously allocated funding for those projects to the tune of 1.3 million. And I'd also like to highlight the successes with the grants program that we've seen as well in 2021, which we believe will see additional funding as well in 2022 as we move along. Next slide, please. So to highlight a bit about the changes that you'll be seeing over year on year when we look at the expense categories on the operating budget, the salaries and benefits line will be having an increase to the tune of 980,000. This will be as a result of merit increases and a cost of living adjustment being proposed at 1%. We're also introducing as part of this budget 2 new headcounts, one for a bylaw manager and the second for an engineering technologist. I also like to note at this point that the engineering technologist position will be directly tied to the funding that's being received from the planning application fees charged to new subdivisions. So it would be a net zero impact on the budget, which would mean that the net new headcount going forward in this budget is the bylaw manager position. And on the contract services side of things, because we've seen a great deal of success with the waste management contract, we are forecasting that the expenses on this side will also increase. We've seen a year-over-year increase as well on our general liability insurance premium to the tune of 96,000. And just highlighting as well the one-time non-capital projects that were previously pulled out from the capital budget and into the operating budget, which we expect will be completed in the year 2022 to the tune of 1.3 million. Next slide, please. And on the revenue side, we're forecasting a growth of $500,000 on the tax revenues. This will be as a result of the impact of the 2021 assessment growth and the 1.9% proposed tax rate increase that staff is recommending. On the users' fees and charges, we'll see an increase as a result of the volume of building permits we expect to process in the year 2022. And on the grants side, we've been notified that there will be a change in the funding allocation of the OCIF program, which is resulting in a significant increase in that funding from the government, along with the success that we've received with the modernization program, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing modernization program in 2022. Next slide, please. So just to do a bit of a reconciliation of how we get to the 1.9 rate increase that's been proposed as part of the 2022 budget. So you would recall that I had mentioned that the total municipal expenses for 2022 was pegged at just over 26 million. If we go by the 2021 municipal tax levy, which was 15.8 million, introducing the 2021 assessment growth along with the projected 2022 assessment growth as well, just over 574,000, and also including other revenue sources such as the government grants and the user fees and the building planning development fees as well, to the tune of 7.9 million, and the one-time reserve transfer to fund the projects that we had previously pulled out of the capital budget and into the operating budget to the tune of 1.3. This brings us to a total funding of 25.7 million. As a result, there is a need for an additional tax to fund this 2022 budget. And that additional tax rate dollar required is just over 301,000. To be able to balance this budget, staff is proposing a 1.9 rate increase on the current tax base to give us a total budgeted tax revenue of 16.7 million for the 2022 budget year. I'll also like to note at this point that the assessment values that we've used as part of these computations, the assessed values based on 2016's MPAC assessment values of properties. MPAC has notified the municipality that we'll not start seeing changes in assessed values of properties until the year 2023. So for the year 2022, residents and property owners can expect that the assessed values of the properties will remain the same as in the year 2021. Next slide, please. So to give a bit of context into the average cost of municipal services to the average household, we can see that legislative services will be costing in the year 2022 the tune of $94, finance at $118, emergency and protective services at $265, general administration at $352, the public works department at $457, environmental services at $153, the municipal center building at $258, our library services at $71, our policing contract at $328, our transfer to reserves for capital and other needs at $118, the Parks and Recreation Department at $141, the Planning and Development Services at $71. Next slide, please. So just to refresh listeners and viewers today on how property taxes are calculated. So the property taxes are based off of the property's assessed value, which comes directly from MPAC. And as we have been notified that there will be no increase in 2022, so we can expect that this will remain the same. And to get the property taxes, the property's assessed value is applied to the municipal tax rate, a combination of the municipal tax rate, the education rate, and the county rate. And as I had mentioned earlier as well, that for the municipal rate, we're bringing forward a proposal to increase this to by 1.9%. The Ministry of Finance has notified the municipality that there will be no increase on the education rates for 2022. And we're estimating that the county rates will be increased by 2.5% for the 2022 budget year. So a combination of all of these rates on the property's assessed value is what gives us the property taxes. Next slide, please. So for the 2022 tax distribution, we'll see that on the property taxes, the municipality is allocated a portion of 53% of the municipal taxes, of the property taxes. The education school boards are allocated 14% and the county at 33%. So based off of an assessment value of just over 400,000, which we have confirmed will not be changing in the 2022 budget year, we can expect to see this property tax rate increase over the year 2021 to 2022, which we believe will have an overall average impact on the property taxes at the rate of 1.84%. So the average increase that a household at an assessment value of just over 400,000 in North Grenville, the increase that they will see is pegged at $83 over the 2022 budget year. And as I also had indicated earlier as well, that the municipal rate is being proposed at 1.9, the education rate is confirmed at 0%, and the county rate we're estimating at this time to be 2.5%. Next slide, please. So the next couple of slides are the detailed budgets for the departments. These details are available on the municipal website for review at any time. This actually concludes the presentation of the municipal operating budget for the year 2022. Happy to take any questions at this time if there are.
So any questions from the members of the public or media here tonight on the operating budget? We have a question from John Palmer. We're transferring 1.3 million from reserves. I may have missed what the balance of reserves will be after that. Femi?
So as part of the presentation to council on the 22nd, we'll be giving a report on what the balance of the overall municipal reserves would be. As part of this presentation tonight, we don't have that detail in this presentation as to what the balances of the reserves will be after the transfer of the 1.3 million.
Okay. So, Mr. Palmer, if I can add a little background to Femi's comments. So, the municipality carries a number of different reserve accounts. We have reserve accounts that are legislated and they're specific to certain things like development charges, cash flow, parkland, water, wastewater. We also have discretionary accounts, discretionary reserve accounts that deals things like their working funds. They deal with to offset any capital costs, unforeseen operational costs, excuse me, as well as discretionary reserves and reserves funds that deal with to offset capital costs. So we have that information available. It's not as simple as there is a total reserve amount, but it's not all accessible for the same things. So we will provide that detail, and if you'd like, we can post that information for the public prior to the meeting coming up on the 22nd.
I definitely appreciate that. Sorry about that. I recognize there's a variety of reserve accounts, and just understanding where we stand, because those reserves are obviously there for a reason. So having that posted would be tremendously appreciated. So thank you very much for that, sir.
Any other questions on the operating budget? Okay, with none, Femi, move.
Okay, thank you, Gary. So we can jump a couple of slides into the capital budget at this point. Okay, so as part of the 2022 capital budget, we'll be bringing forward two main projects for the staff recommended budget. These projects are the County Road 43 Rehabilitation Expansion Project and the Riverside Expansion Project, Riverside Park Expansion Project. So both projects in 2022 will require funding. And I would also note that these projects are multi-year projects. These projects are actually reflective of our strategic objective, which is also to manage the growth of North Grenville in a sustainable way. This project, along with other projects that staff will be recommending to council, will highlight the investments that we need to make now to manage our growth. I'd also like to highlight that the County Road 43 project will be administered by the county and flowed through the municipality or to the municipality through the Public Works Department. We expect that we'll be bringing further details on the project specifics in the coming months and coming weeks as well. The other project which we'll be highlighting as part of this budget is the Riverside Park project, which will be administered through the Parks and Recreation Department. I had mentioned that in the beginning that the detailed design of this project was completed in 2021, and we expect that construction tendering will commence upon approval of the budget. Next slide, please. So just to go a bit into specifics of the capital budget, we're bringing forward a recommendation for the Public Works Department capital spend for 2022 at 3.9 million, the Parks and Recreation Department at 2.2, other departments at 311,000, the Municipal Center building at 165, Emergency and Protective Services at 65,000. And the different categorizations of projects in the capital budget for 2022, we have roads at 3.2 million, the Parkland Rehabilitation Project for the Riverside Park at 1.5, fleet and equipment investment at 750,000, our investments in sidewalks at 260,000, buildings at just over 500,000, streetlights at $37,485, and other capital projects at 291,000. So this is a total investment of 6.6 million on the capital projects that we'll be bringing forward as part of the 2022 budget. Next slide, please. So to be able to fund all of these projects in 2022, as part of this budget, we'll be bringing forward a recommendation to draw from various reserves to the tune of just over 4 million, to also draw from our development charges reserve fund to the tune of 1.1 million. We'll be leveraging our grants program to the tune of 1.1 million as well. And in the current tax revenue, we'll be drawing just over 200,000 and other revenue at 15,000 to be able to fund all of these projects in 2022. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we have the detailed capital projects for the Public Works Department. And as I had mentioned, that the major one on the road side, to the right-hand side of the slide, is the County Road 43 project at 1.8 million. Next slide, please. And for the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department, also on the right-hand side of the slide, is the Riverside Parkland project to the tune of 1.5 million in this budget. That will be the major project going forward into 2022 for the Parks Department. Next slide, please. And for the other smaller capital projects for the municipality, in the Emergency and Protective Services, We have a total capital investment of 65,000, fleet and equipment for other departments at 110,000, for the economic development department, equipment at 46,000, and a rehabilitation of the building to 170,000 for the council chambers. So this concludes the capital budget for 2022. I'll be happy to take any questions on the capital budget at this time.
Any questions from the public? Just for a follow-up to Mr. Palmer's question, I have posted in the chat the approximate reserves of the total of the three separate reserve general reserve accounts we have for information. This will be given more detail at our meeting on the 22nd going forward, and we can follow any specific questions that follow up from today's meeting if required. So, any questions from the public? Well, with that, if we can move on to water and wastewater budget.
All right, thank you, Gary. Okay, so for the water and wastewater department, I'll just like to give a bit of an introduction to how this works. So the water and wastewater budget is a separate and whole budget from the municipal budget. So just as the municipal budget has its own operating and capital budget, so does the water and wastewater have its own operating and capital budget. So all expenses contained both in the operating and capital budget are funded directly from the user rates on the water and sewer services offered. The budget and the operations for the water and wastewater department are set up to be self-sustaining and to not rely on the tax base for funding. So what this means is that the water and wastewater department has its own reserve that's also separate from all the other reserve and reserve funds within the municipality. Next slide, please. So the rates that were used to create the water and wastewater budget are based solely on the rate study for the department. This rate study was approved by council in 2020. And the study actually prescribes that the 2022 rates that staff is bringing forward as part of this budget is exactly what it was in 2021. So this means that there will be no increase in rates for the 2022 budget year. So the average cost that a household can expect to spend on municipal water and wastewater services will be based solely on the amount of consumption that that household undertakes in any given year. Next slide, please. So as a result of this, we're seeing a very slight increase in the total water and wastewater operating budget. The 1.1% year-over-year growth that has been identified is actually as a result of growth and not as a result of increase in rates. We can also see on the expense side that the overall expenses year over year from 2021 to 2022 are also flat as well. Next slide, please. And just to categorize the expenses into different contexts, we can see the different areas in which the water wastewater budget expenditures will follow in 2022. And on the right-hand side, we can see that all of these expenses we expect will be funded by 100% by the user fees collected. Next slide, please. And on the capital side, the major project for the water and wastewater department will be the water pollution control plant. We expect that this project will require significant investment in 2022. I also like to highlight that this project is also a multi-year project. We will be bringing forward more information as to the funding mechanism and the overall scope of the project as we go forward in 2022. We also expect that to be able to fund all of these projects in 2022, there will be a draw from the water wastewater reserves. We will be relying on our development charges as well, and our grants program in 2022. Next slide, please. And on this slide, we have the detailed list of all of the projects that we can expect to see in the water wastewater department in 2022. One project I would like to highlight as part of this presentation is the I&I improvement. We expect that our investment in this project will result in significant efficiencies in 2022, and will also result in substantial cost savings for the department in 2022 and beyond. Next slide, please. So this actually concludes the water wastewater budget for 2022. We'll be happy to take any questions on the water wastewater budget or the capital budget or operating budget at this time.
So any questions regarding the water wastewater budget? Femi, maybe just for the information of the public, and forgive me if I missed this part of the presentation, about the difference between the two budgets and how the money is collected and used.
Yes. So basically, the water wastewater budget is a separate operation from the municipality. We've set up our water wastewater operations to be self-sufficient, 100% on the user fees that are collected. We've also set up a reserve for the water wastewater department so that any surplus in any given year is transferred directly into that specific dedicated reserve for the water wastewater department. So what this means in effect is that every expenditure on the water wastewater side of things is not relying on the tax base for funding. It is set up to be 100% self-sufficient. And I believe in one of the slides, I showed as well that the 100% of the revenue source to fund all of the expenses in any given budget year is from the user fees that are collected in that given year. And also as part of the budget, we are proposing that the rates remain the same year over year from 2021. So there will be no increase in the overall rates, the fixed and the consumable rates for the water wastewater department in 2022.
All right, so that concludes our presentation tonight on the three separate budgets. One last call for questions with respect to the information shared today. I know it's a lot of information to be shared as well. It is there. There is an opportunity between now and our first public meeting on the 22nd to submit either email or call into the office to ask any specific questions you may have. And similar to that, anything that's brought up will forward to council as part of their consideration during their deliberations. The deliberation of council will take place over 2 nights, the 22nd and 6th, with getting to a little more detail and input from council with respect and questions with respect to the components that staff have recommended moving forward on both the capital and operating side. So with nothing, if there's no other questions or comments from the public, again, thank you for attending our meeting tonight. And hopefully you and your friends will come out on the 22nd to see council deliberate the full budget itself. So once again, thank you very much and have a good rest of your evening.